The presenting sponsor of Moon Tower Soccer is FVF Law.
To find out what makes FVF a different kind of injury law firm, you can visit fvf.law.
Hello, friends. Thanks for listening to Moon Tower Soccer. This week, we'll cover the Austin FC news of the week. We'll be joined by Adrian Healey to preview the Portland Timbers match, pick our best 11, and get his take on the rest of the season. And then we're also going to answer some questions from our Patreon members. My name is Landon Cottam, and I'm joined, as always, by Mr. Jeremiah Bentley.
Hey, everybody. I'm Jeremiah Bentley. And I was reminded that I probably should have used that line at some point in this video that we shot. I think a few weeks ago, we teased the making of video. I was going to call it a film, but it'll be a very short film. Making a video with some of our friends from at Austin Beer Works that also involved the Pollo crew, the Fighting Leslies, Carrie Tillery on the scripting and stepping in and being probably the best actor in the whole thing. And I just enjoyed that thing. And if you I'm sure we'll put the video on the show notes if you haven't seen the video yet, but I know in a season that is kind of hard for a lot of fans and it seems like a long and slogging kind of season, just the creativity of the fan base and the fact that we're all here for each other in good and bad has been one of the ongoing things that I love about the whole Austin FC experience.
And also all the good that the soccer community has been able to do for the greater Austin community, which is what this beer is going to be doing, is raising money for a really great cause.
Yeah, so if you haven't checked out Community First, which is helping individuals transition out of homelessness, it's a great cause. It's very mission-based. We're happy to play our little part in that. And it's just one of the things going on. There's Brad Stuvers playing cornhole to raise money for another cause, and there's Austin Soccer Foundation, and there's Soccer Assist and for ATX, and they're the supporter groups and all the things that they're doing. And so, I just in a bit of a downtime, I would like everybody to kind of remember and think about all the good things about the experience around this club and how that all ties us together.
Yeah, well said. Let's jump into the Austin FC news. We'll start with Austin FC 2. They drew 1-1 in Minnesota, went to penalty kicks as is custom in MLS Next Pro. They ended up losing the penalty shootout 9-8. I think it was 13 rounds or something kicks, like that. Yeah. So it ended up with just 1 point when they could have gotten the second one in those penalty shootouts. They slipped now to third in the West. How many games do they have left? Do you remember, Jeremiah? It looks like there are 2 games left, and one of them being against the Colorado Rapids 2, who is currently leading the Western Conference, and then the other being against North Texas SC, which is FC Dallas's second team. So it looks like that Colorado one is going to be a big one just because they could use the points, but it's also going to be a tough one. Good thing that's going to be at home this coming Friday. But they're still in pretty good shape. If they can stay in those top 3 spots in the West, they should be able to secure the home game and getting to pick their opponent.
Yeah, and just this game itself. So I think Alfonso Campo Chavez scores the Austin goal. Just generally, Austin did not look very good. I feel like Minnesota United was the better team on the day, and that the result was what the result should have been. It's just, I feel like Austin was defending. I don't remember how many times Minnesota United hit the woodwork in the second half, but there were, but it felt like several times. And it even as good as David Loss is, some of those goals just not the goals, but some of the attempts they get nothing to do with. And I think a little bit of it might have had to do with Kip Keller going out early. I think what minute did he go out in? It was pretty quick.
Yeah, it was before the 25th minute. I don't remember exactly when it was.
And then he was replaced by I want to say Jesse Pinkman. I don't think it's his actual name.
Chris Pinkham.
Chris Pinkham, close enough. Yeah, Chris Pinkham, who then also caught a elbow to the face and came out near the end of the first half and played the second half in a jersey with no number on it because he was so bloody. So it's hard to say that Austin FC 2 should have got a different result than they did on the night. So Kip was out. Micah Burton is out because he's playing for the national team. Bobosu Bayarunga is out because he's playing for Uganda. CJ Fodre is out because he's basically a first team player at this point. Like, is this just, should we expect Austin to struggle in the last two games and playoffs because of this sort of roster depletion? And then kind of the other question that we talked about before we started recording is, is that okay? Like, if the goal of the second team is to prepare the first team, is to have a pipeline of the first team, then, at some point when we get late in the year, like, it's probably okay that you're sacrificing points to like have people ready for Austin FC.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point. Like, yeah, maybe having these guys out will hurt us. Having CJ with the first team will hurt this team. But like you said, that is the point. Developing players. And if you can send Micah Burton to Europe to play with the youth national team, that's good for his development. It might not be the best thing for this team, but it is good for his development. Same with Bobo going and playing for Uganda. Same with CJ being up with the first team. Like, that is the point of this team, is to develop players. Yeah, it would be cool to finish as high as we can in the table, to do as well as we can in the playoffs, but the maximum goal is to get these guys ready to play MLS minutes. And so, yeah, I think it's good to keep that in mind and kind of balance those things.
Yeah, and it's weird because like you don't see necessarily the connection between like first team results and second team play. This when you're looking at a league where Colorado Rapids 2 is the best, is like the leading team in the Western Conference. Like,
yeah,
seems like maybe Austin has an identity and overall sort of a thing that they're looking to do. I think one of the other things that was interesting on the broadcast they talked about was just about how Damian Loss has performed this year, and about how Preston Burpo has been involved in his success. So like it's about playing for the future. It's about like the whole system. And so like the first team coaching staff is very much involved in the second team players in the interest of connecting them back to like leading themselves to contribute to the greater good.
So we mentioned a couple of national team call-ups from the second team. We also had one from the first team. I was at a work retreat for most of last week and didn't get to keep up with all these guys as closely as I would have liked, but Jeremiah kindly did research into all of these games. Do you want to catch us up there?
Yeah, let's start with Julio Cascante, who played for the Costa Rican national team. He played all 90 minutes in a 3-1 victory over Saudi Arabia. He will play again Tuesday morning before against the UAE before returning to Austin, so we won't know the results of that. He seemed pretty active. He had 42 touches, hit 83% of his passes. He had some duels. I don't think it did great. Oh, wait. Oh, you talked about how we should argue about lesser points. So of the 22 players on the field in that game, he was the 20th rated in terms of how FOTMob rated his performance. Like, how much validity do you want to put into that?
I did not watch the game, so I'm going to put zero validity into
it. FOTMob said he was one of the worst players on the field. Do you believe that or not?
Yeah. So again, FOTMob, over the span of a season, if you want to take the average of those scores, that's probably a decent mark of how well a player did throughout a season. But on a given game, if you put a mannequin on the field and bounce 3 balls off of him and it scores a hat trick, he's going to get a 9-point rating. And so like that's my FOTMob rant.
Yeah. So what I'm interested in is like what it's like deferring to somebody who's actually like seen him play. Like, does Julio start Tuesday? Does Julio go all 90 Tuesday? I feel like that's the better barometer for like, did he have a good game in the first game or not? And I mean, maybe he will. Then yeah, Baronga played in a AFCON qualifier.
Yeah, I believe that's right.
Yeah, AFCON over Niger. He actually played 89 minutes. He got subbed off in the 90th minute. He seemed to have a good performance just based upon the stats, but he played pretty defensively. Like a lot of his numbers were like on duels, tackles, clearances, which I don't feel like he plays as much for Austin FC2. I found that a little bit surprising, but I haven't followed them, the second team, enough to like really know whether that's a difference or not. Like, what's your perspective on kind of how he plays for there, and maybe what you see from him with the national team?
Yeah, I haven't seen. Whenever we signed him, I watched some footage from him on the national team, and so for Austin FC2, we generally attack in a 4-3-3 with a single 6, and he is usually one of those further attacking central midfielders. So he kind of plays like taking it to the first team, like kind of the Owen Wolf role that we've seen most of this year. It's like not the most creative central midfielder, but not the farthest back central midfielder, if that makes sense. So if maybe they're playing like a 4-4-2 or two deeper lying midfielders and he's one of those guys, that's not super surprising to me because he's even done that in a pinch for Austin FC2 this year.
And then the third guy that was on national team duty, and probably the one that we have the least about, it's Micah Burton, played for the U17s. They beat Ukraine, lost to Switzerland and the Czech Republic. I don't remember the name of the tournament, but it's named after a coach.
I think it's a person.
It's a person somewhere in Eastern Europe. And I found a few articles that talked about the just overall the center forwards for this club for the US17s were pretty ineffective, specifically including Micah Burton. I guess maybe just add two things. One, like how much you trying to find out about this tournament, like understood it, and then how you feel about Micah Burton as a central forward for US.
I remember this tournament last year trying to find information about it, and there was nobody was talking about it. And I think it seems like maybe you did the same thing. I found an article and that was it was able to use Google Translate to put it into English, but they did not talk about the US team at all. I remember doing that last year. So I think we went down similar paths, but Micah Burton playing as a 9, they keep doing this on the national team and I really hate it because can he do it? Sure. And like he got better at it over the span of the last couple of years, but he is not a 9. He's never going to be a 9 as a pro. And so it really annoys me that they put him there so frequently. And also not surprising that he didn't look good there. Because again, he's not a 9.
He wasn't good at the position that he probably shouldn't be playing. Yeah, man, just like even his age, like size wise, the guy does not look like a 9 in any way, shape, or form. And then to your point, like when he plays it, he also doesn't play like one. Yeah. There's a couple other quick hits. So one, Phil West on verdeallday.substack.com just published the first half of an article on all 43 goals scored against Austin FC and who's to blame for those. I mean, God bless Phil for agreeing to go through that effort, but I would encourage everybody to read that. I don't know that I took a lot out of it outside of like, I guess what I took out of it is whereas previously Austin has been really, really bad about allowing points at the start of games. Like Austin allows a lot of goals in the last 15 minutes of matches. And I think that's one of the things that came up against New England is that I believe that is it the most in the league in the last 15 minutes that Austin's allowed? I think it's something like that.
I think that's right. Yeah.
So Phil's article has that and lots of central defenders to blame. With lots of different central defenders to blame for the goals that Austin's allowed. Yeah,
and that's a thing that I was glad to see Phil do was include a category for team and not like force himself to put every goal on a single person, because I think oftentimes there is one person you could maybe put it on, but more frequently it is a group effort.
Yeah, absolutely. And just the last little thing, we saw Maxi Ruti last week on Instagram, like posting a picture from his agent's office in Miami and kind of like making it seem like he was gone. And then people seemed annoyed by that. But like, are you going to be sad to see Maxi Ruti go to Miami? Like, he's going to run out of legs or arms. I don't remember where he gets his teams tattooed, but at some point he's going to like run out of space.
Like, I don't think it's a given that he's going to Miami. Like, it seems like that's just where his agent's office is.
It's where his agent is, right? I think that's true too.
In any, like, I think the thing that I take, I'm not going to be that sad, because B, I'm not surprised. Like, I think the thing that I was surprised most about is how surprised some people seem to think that Maxi wasn't going to be on the team next year. Like, I've kind of just been operating under the assumption that he is not going to be on this team next year.
Yeah, same. I think you're a little bit like, maybe last week or a few shows ago, you talked about how like every Argentinian, probably in MLS, who's had like a long career, would be happy to play for like a minimum salary in Miami too. And he's like he was on the broadcast, right? when they were playing in Houston. Like,
yeah.
So that seems very unsurprising if that's going to be his goal. I think the question more is like, is that Miami's plan for Maxey?
Right. Yeah. I do not doubt that Maxey would love to go play with Messi for a season, but they're going to have guys knocking down their door. So I think he's going to have to fight for that spot probably. But yeah, I mean, like Maxey he's been a fun player to have on the team, but he's just like not really been productive or effective in his minutes this year. He's getting a little older, and for a player who, like, part of his appeal, part of his effectiveness comes from being able to run a lot, both offensively and defensively, and he's gonna start slowing down on that. He just hasn't been that great this year. So I mean, if he would come back on a minimum contract here and be like that Will Bruin role, like the third guy, break glass in case of emergency striker, sure, I'd be happy to see him stay. But otherwise, like, I think we can do better for less money.
I don't disagree with that at all. So, I think it's all the news. You want to go ahead and where we go? We're going to take a break, do a little preview, and then do some questions. I think it's the plan.
Yeah, well, we're going to do a preview for the Portland Timbers match with Adrian Healey. We'll also talk a little bit about the rest of the season with him and get his take on that, just because he is so familiar with this team. And then talk a little bit about what we think Austin's best 11 is. Yeah, and then we're going to move on to listener questions from our wonderful Patreon members. So hang tight. We'll be right back with more Moon Tower Soccer.
No one is around.
Moon Tower Soccer is brought to you by our friends at FEF Law, the official injury lawyers of Austin FC.
FEF is a different kind of personal injury law firm dedicated to community, transparency, and client education.
You can go to fef.law to find out what makes FEF a different kind of injury law firm and why understanding your legal options can dramatically change the outcome of a case. Once again, that's fef.law. Amplify Credit Union is a member-owned financial cooperative that serves the needs of Central Texans for over 5 decades. Amplify's team lives and works in the community, making them the experts on how members can achieve their financial goals.
What makes Amplify different? No bank fees. Amplify is the first financial institution in Texas to put an end to bank fees. In 2022, Americans paid almost $8 billion in overdraft fees alone. Millennials pay an average of $336 a year in bank fees, which works out to 6 Austin FC game tickets per person per year. You'll pay none of those bank fees with Amplify Credit Union.
Amplify membership is open to any Texas resident. Learn to trust your bank again at Amplify Credit Union. To learn more, go to www.goamplify.com/moontower.
And we learned that this is really successful for the last match. So again, Amplify is offering free parking at the Esperanza branch, which is minutes away from the stadium. For any Moon Tower listener, you can go to www.goamplify.com/moontower to enter RSVP. Make sure and leave your car information, because apparently some people didn't want to type in their license plates last time. And like, you'll get free parking there. You may or may not get a confirmation email, but as long as you enter all that stuff into the link, you will be fine.
All right, we are thrilled to be joined by our old friend and former Austin FC play-by-play announcer, Adrian Healey. Adrian, so good to see you again, man.
Landon, likewise. Jeremiah, likewise. I saw Jeremiah very briefly with his son just before the Seattle game, which was a pleasure. That was the perfect start to an evening that was anything but perfect by the end of it. But I haven't seen you for way too long, Landon. So thanks for having me back.
Is Jeremiah's son taller than you?
Oh yeah, and bigger in every regard. I mean, he is truly an impressive specimen, Jeremiah. Well done.
Yeah, you've met his mom and I don't know where he came from, but like, we're pretty sure that he's our child. But like, every once in a while, we're just shocked and amazed by the size.
Yeah, it's that all taco diet. It must be. It's great.
We want to get into maybe picking Austin FC's best 11, or maybe just the 11 we want to see in this next game. But first, let's talk a little bit about the Timbers. Jeremiah, do you want to tee us up for this one?
Yes, I'll do that. So Austin and Portland now both tied on points in the Western Conference. Austin's in 10th because there's one fewer game played. Portland's in 11th. Portland beat LAFC on Saturday 2-0 with 2 goals, both from defenders. and they're 2 wins and a draw in the last 3. Interim head coach for the last 3 weeks now, Miles Joseph. So I think they lost the first couple matches, have seen some good results. I think, Adrian, we could probably get into this a little bit. I feel like the LAFC win just kind of shows the chaos of the Western Conference, but that's kind of where Portland sits and where Austin sits. I don't expect to see a ton of Portland seems like a very familiar team to the club at this point, so I don't expect to see a ton of things different out of them. But Adrian, I think you're probably starting to prepare for the weekend. What should Austin be ready for?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really, really looking forward to Sunday night. I mean, it's a game that sits on its own. All the attention at the country. It's going to be the only MLS game that night. It'll also be I guess I should say, a national broadcast on Fox. But of course, you'll be watching on.
That doesn't matter.
On Apple, but no, the fact that it is that lends it a special air for starters. And I think it's safe to say that there hasn't been a meeting in the series between these two teams that has meant as much as this one will be. I mean, it's a genuine 6-pointer. The winner will take a massive step in the right direction and damage the hopes of the loser, not irreparably, but badly. So it has everything you need. And I didn't think we'd be saying that about this game a few weeks ago, and primarily from the Timbers' perspective. I was there the last time they came to Texas, and I called their game in Houston 3 or 4 weeks ago, where they just got blown out of the water 5-0. Looked a shell of a team and all over the place, and that, as it transpired, was the last rights for Giovanni Savarese and his era there, and so that came to an end. And they acted very quickly and made a change, and they've got a bounce from it. As you said, 2 wins in the draw in their last 3. Miles Joseph is the interim who's taken over. Guy who's, in fact, there are many, many similarities, I think, between Portland and Austin this season. Now they've got Miles Joseph at the helm. He's of a similar age to Josh Wolf, had a similar career trajectory as a player, and then as an assistant coach. He was an assistant for 13 years as opposed to 7 or 8 for Josh. So, and this is his first go as a head coach, and he's only the interim, but he's certainly helped turn things around. They're heading in the right direction, and that win this past weekend against LAFC was huge for them. And they played really well in that game, really well. Reminded me a little bit of our win against LAFC same time last year, albeit by a bigger scoreline. That was as big for them as that was for us a year ago. So yeah, we're getting a team who have kind of changed trajectory pretty significantly, and I think it's going to be a really entertaining game. I mean, they're two defenses that are both vulnerable at the moment. In fact, they're the 2 teams that have shipped the most goals in the Western Conference, even more than Colorado. So I think there's going to be goals. So I've just cursed it. I've just given it the Healey blessing. So probably 0-0 or 1-0. But really looking forward to it.
Looking back through kind of the history between these two teams, Austin had those 2 big blowouts in year 1, but since then, I think it's been something like 3 losses and 2 draws or something for Austin against Portland. And I watched the highlights back from the game earlier this year, because it was back in, I think, May 5th was that one. So I had a fuzzy memory about it. But Austin was playing with their back 5 look, which is what we saw in the last game, more or less, from Austin now. And another similarity, Austin, the first goal that Portland scored comes from no pressure out on the wing on a cross that comes in, and then Adam Lundqvist getting beat back post by a guy much taller than him. So that was,
where have we seen this before?
Yeah. And so Portland has not scored that many goals on set pieces this year, but they're a team that historically has, and a team that still has the tools to be dangerous in those moments, with Luis Mabiala, Dario Zuparch, and Zach McGraw kind of rotating in those center back positions, all big guys. So I think that's a thing that Austin need to be really careful about. Another thing is playing in transition, which is a thing that Portland has done to us in the past, especially on the road. Well, they'll sit deep. They're going to beat you on the break. They're going to beat you in set pieces and try to steal a goal and sneak out. And they've done that to Austin several times at this point.
Yeah. We also both have major superstar designated players who aren't quite living up to billing at the moment. I don't think anyone could argue that Driussi is some way short of where he was last year, and that was another bad miss in the New England game. We'd love to see him put it right, but equally, Portland have Evander, and his stats are very similar to Sebastian Driussi so far this season. I think 7 goals and 4 assists. He's been a little disappointing. He's come a little better of late, and so that's going to be an interesting battle to watch. We both also have not many goals from the centre forward position. It's another interesting similarity between the two teams. I mean, Evander is their top scorer. The next top scorer is Bowley with 6, who's the only centre forward who has more than 2 goals. So
I know Felipe Mora was out for a lot of the season with an injury, but he's been starting some of the games as of late. So maybe he can provide a bit more of a spark than Bowley has been able to. Yeah.
So it's going to be set it up to be a high scoring game. Who's going to get the goals? Well, I still think everything as Evander goes, Portland goes, as Driussi goes, Austin goes. So they will be pivotal figures. That goes without saying. But you're right to point out their set piece threat. I mean, it's going to be really interesting to see what Josh does. You were talking about what ideal starting 11s centre back. I mean, with possibly 3 choices now, with Hedges, Väisänen, and Cascante. What does he do? Will we in fact see Hedges and Väisänen together for the first time? And there's a chance we will, given that Julio's been overseas and back and played a game. So maybe this is the game where that changes.
Yeah, let's get into that. Let's talk about what we want to see on the field for Austin in this game. So I know this is divisive. Some people like the back 3, back 5 look. Some people hate it. I am one of the people who like it and think that it can be. I think it just suits the talent on the field a bit better. I would like to see them run out with that again. I know, like you just mentioned, Cascante is going to be on short rest, on traveling. Maybe we see all 3 of those center back options play, Väisänen, Cascante, and Hedges. But if because they don't feel like Cascante is ready to play 90, maybe you see Väisänen, Hedges, and Lima in that back 3, kind of like we've been doing, but switching Cascante for Hedges or Väisänen, depending on which game you're looking at. I guess, do either of you disagree that 2 questions. Do you think we'll actually see that? And do you want to see that?
Well, do you want to go, Jeremiah? Because I have quite a strong opinion on that.
Do you gather your thoughts? Okay, I'll go before that. So my take is we should get the best 11 that we possibly have on the field. And so if Cascante's back and can play and is healthy, sure. But I kind of hate Nick Lima as part of a back 3, and I'd rather just see like a straight 4 across with Väisänen and Hedges, and then Gallagher and Lima out wide. And what I should know this, but like when you do that, then what player are we taking off the field in terms of like having those 3 center backs, and like how does that affect things? So go ahead, Adrian. Now,
well, I still think. Call me crazy, but I still think the whole lineup has to be dictated by where you're putting Sebastian Driussi, and I do not want to see him as a centre forward. I just, or a false 9 or whatever it is. I just don't think that's getting the best out of him.
For the record, I'm not arguing for that.
So working backwards from that assumption, I would go with a back 4, particularly given that Portland don't have a centre forward that really worry you so much. I would go with a back 4, and then for me, I mean, I think the fullbacks are pretty obvious. I think I probably would try Hedges and Väisänen together in this game, particularly with the set piece threat, and Cascade coming back, and then Gallagher and Lima as the fullbacks. In midfield, it gets interesting. I think I'd leave Ring in there alongside Dani Pereira. I think Owen Wolf would still be the man to miss out. I think I'd have those 2 behind Driussi, and then I'd have probably Finley one side and Rigoni the other. I think still, I think I would stick to that, and then Zardes up top. That's what I would do.
Yeah, I would not be upset about that either. I think going back to my back three wishes / predictions, I think Adam Lundqvist, as good as he was in that formation, that back five formation for stretches earlier this year, he has not looked very good on the field lately. So I would put Gallagher as the left wing back, Lima as the right wing back, or if we don't have those other three center backs healthy, you move Lima back into that spot and you play Gallagher on the right, Lundqvist on the left. This is another controversial one in this system. Although Johan Valencia is not on paper better than 3 to 5 other center midfield options, I think profile wise, he suits this system best. So I would have Valencia and Pereira as the two deeper lying mids, and then Driussi and Ring as the two mids further forward. And then if Zardes is healthy and ready to go at least 60, I'd start him. If he's not, I'll start Rigoni at the 9.
Do you guys ever play the what minute will Johan Valencia get a yellow card game in? Because we like to play that. He gets a yellow card, sometimes within the first 15, 20 minutes. In the last game in New England, he left it late until the 70th minute. And it's a bit of fun at his expense. And he is a really good player, but he just always ends up getting booked. So
him and Dani like to keep us on their toes.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. No, I can see that. I can see that too. Interesting. I thought you were going to pull out the Hector Jimenez start for just to take us back to a goal against Portland in season 1. But
I as much as I like Hector, I think his playing days are close to done.
Right. He's got a good coaching career ahead of him.
Yeah.
Hector.
Yeah.
He's got a great brain on him.
Yeah, he seems like a really good dude. I think that's kind of what we're on now. It's like Hector is going to be such a good mentor of youth. So, Adrian, what do you think about the Rigoni at 9 thing that I know some fans have kind of called for a little bit through necessity, just because of the health questions around others? Do you see that as like being in a position that he can succeed in, or is it just sort of an emergency situation that he could fill in?
Yeah, I see it the same way as when they play Driussi there. I see it as not ideal. I see it as emergency. I see it as they can do a job and they'll get you the odd goal from that position. But I think everything else being equal, if Zardes is remotely match fit, which he almost has to be at this point, I would prefer his aerial ability and his presence in that number 9 role, particularly against this Portland Timbers defense, which I think is certainly still their Achilles heel and can be got at. So, Rigoni has shown a few things, hasn't he? He's definitely shown a few more elements to his game, but I don't think he's a natural number 9 and not the sort of presence and spearhead to this attack that really fits the system. Can do it at a push, but wouldn't want to see it every week.
Yeah, I agree with that. Okay, so last week we talked about what the remaining 7 games look like for Austin and kind of like somewhat predicted what we thought the rest of the season was going to look like. We'd love to get your thoughts on the remaining few games as well, if you don't mind sharing.
Yeah, no, it's amazing, isn't it? It's the West that no one wants to win. I just feel like it's a year where there's so many teams who are there's no great teams. I mean, St. Louis are obviously good, and they've come out of the gates flying and really given a textbook example on how to be an expansion team both on and off the field. But they're also taking advantage of the fact that some of the other powerhouses have been a little below par, LAFC and Seattle and RSL, and down where we are. I mean, is there really, can you really say that Vancouver in 6th place are that much better than Austin in 10th? I can't, not with any certainty. Minnesota, San Jose, Dallas, all those teams are within reach. Our problem is we've got teams sneaking up behind us who are also on good runs and starting to state their case. I mean, not only have we got to catch up with Dallas and San Jose. We got to fend off the Galaxy and Sporting Kansas City and the Timbers, and we have it in our own hands because we have those games. I mean, those 2 home games this Sunday and next Sunday against Portland and the Galaxy. That for me is the season right there. I mean, if you get 6 points out of those 2 games, you are 2/3 of the way to getting the job done and getting over the playoff line. I mean, the 2 home wins on those 2 Sundays, I would almost, I mean, it's almost sacrilege to say, but I'm sure Josh is thinking like this. With that Red Bulls game in between those 2 home games, I'd almost be like, all right, well, that's anything we get out of that is just a bonus, traveling across country midweek. But those 2 home Sunday games we have to have. And if you do get them, and then it's Colorado and DC up next, both of whom are beatable. So it's, to me, it's there for the taking. It's hard to know what points total it's going to take. So we've never had 9 teams make a playoff before. So got to imagine 4 wins would easily do the job, and maybe even only 3 and a couple of draws thrown in as well. So if they get up to get another 10, 11 points, that should be enough, up to about 45, I would think.
The math that we kind of did last week, like 3 wins and a draw would maybe do it, but then 3 wins and 2 draws probably does it, with how weird the West is, like 44, 45 points probably gets you there. Right. But again, it's like, can you knock out the teams directly behind you, Portland and LA? Those to me are just so crucial. Yeah. And they're both against teams who've started to turn a bit of a corner as well. So it's going to be two great Sunday nights at Q2. Yeah, we talk about so much how like big chunks of the MLS season feel like they don't really matter. This is the part that matters. These are the games you have to win. And like you said, that Red Bulls one, if you're going to rotate and kind of like rest a little bit and not push a little too hard, that is the one to do it. But if you don't take care of business against Portland, you can't really afford to do that. And so you have to go for it. And so winning this one is big on not only for the points and hurting Portland, but just being able to rotate and be a little healthier going forward also. Yeah.
And all of these teams coming to visit us don't have great road records. I mean, Portland have only won once on the road this season. It was against St. Louis. I don't know how they went there and won, but they did. The Galaxy have only won twice on the road all season long. So these are teams we need to be beating at home, and all we got to do is get over that playoff line. I still think, this 8th against 9th playoff. If you finish in 8th place and you get a home wild card playing game, whatever you want to call it, the 8th v 9th game, you get that at home and you win that, then you're facing a 3-game playoff series and at least 1 at home. So those home playoff games are where we want to be at. So 8th place I think is doable for this team, which is where they got 4 points to make up on San Jose to get there, and got to leapfrog Dallas in the process. But that's what I would be targeting right now.
Yeah, we talked about this a little bit, like before we started recording, but that could be a crazy decision day match in San Jose, which I think you said you are calling, would be for Austin to be on the road there and needing to get some kind of result and hopefully make it into the playoff bracket. Yeah.
No, I'm psyched actually. I've got 3 of these running games. I got this game on Sunday. I got the DC United home midweek game, and then that decision day game in San Jose, where let's hope it's all on the line. That would be fantastic.
Yeah, let's hope it's not an indecision day. Right. Adrian, thanks so much for joining us. We look forward. Yeah, like you said, you got to see Jeremiah recently. Hopefully, I'll run into you again at some time soon. But if nothing else, we'd love to have you on the show again in the near future. Thanks for joining us, and good luck with the rest of the season.
Guys, always a pleasure. You guys do such a fantastic job. I hope you know how treasured you are amongst the Austin fan base, because you are very valuable indeed. Keep it up.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, thank you, Adrian. Moon Tower Soccer is brought to you by Covert Ford. The Coverts have been meeting the needs of local car buyers for 114 years because of their service, financial expertise, and support after the sale.
In addition to supporting car buyers, Covert's an important part of the soccer community and the official automotive partner of Austin FC.
So, Moon Moon Tower. So Covert has been putting lots of Austin FC players in lots of cool cars and trucks and hybrids and all the other things. And if you want to check out your newest Ford F-150 or a Bronco or whatever it might be sure to check out Covert Ford.
If you're in the market for a new or used vehicle, be sure to check out covertford.com.
Moon Tower Soccer is brought to you by Sage Wilson Realty. Thanks to Sage Wilson Realty, we'll be giving away 2 tickets to an upcoming match. So fill out the form in the show notes to enter for your chance to win.
Again, this is made possible by Sage Wilson Realty. So if you or someone you know are in need of Sage real estate advice in Austin, talk to our friends at Sage Wilson Realty. Be sure to check them out online at sagewilson.com. All right. We want to thank Adrian Healey one more time for joining us. Jeremiah, let's jump into our Patreon questions.
Yeah, let's do it. I want to start with one that actually came in from, before we get into Patreon, one that came from Twitter, but it was like such a good question. I think it was worth discussing because I feel like it's a little bit of a reflection on the way that guys played this year. But we had a question from Lucas Laredo about Sebastian Driussi. So he says, I feel like we talk about every other player ad nauseum except for him. For me, it's been disappointing. He's not putting his stamps on his game, missing chances, lots of turnovers. I'm curious. I feel like we don't talk about him a lot because he has both not had the highs of last year and not disappointed people in the way that nobody can be upset. Like he's done just enough, like for Austin FC. Like,
yeah,
how do you feel about that?
I think that's a fair point. Like from Lucas there, like we like arguably haven't been as critical of him as we could have been, but also like I feel like there's some games where we just don't say his name at all, and just because he's like fine in some games, and so it's like either we're talking about a bunch of bad stuff that happened and he didn't make the top 10 list of bad things that happened, or he's just like didn't really stand out in any way whatsoever, and so he kind of just gets left off sometimes. So, but I think it's an excellent point. We did mention a few shows back that one of the big reasons of why we think this team isn't doing so well is because Diego Fagundes, Sebastian Driussi were such big parts of the success in 2022, and when you have neither of those guys performing at a high level, it really hurts this team. And so Fagundes is no longer in the equation, but Driussi is still here and has still been spectacular at times, but it seems like more often than not, he's been just fine. And then occasionally outright bad in moments. I don't think there's been like whole games where he's been bad, but times where he maybe forces an issue a little bit too much, tries to take the game a little bit too much on his shoulders in ways that aren't really helpful. And other times just poor touches, poor passes, poor decision making. And again, this is on a sliding scale, like a curved scale. Like standards are higher when you're talking about a guy like this. And so, yeah, Lucas is right. Maybe we should be a bit more tough on him.
Yeah, it's just been it's hard when he's got, you know, he's the leading scorer on the team in goals, but it's 8 and there's 2 penalties. It's only 6 in the run of play. So, I mean, I don't think there's any doubt he's had kind of a disappointing year this year. And I guess the question becomes like, is it just him or is he like a sort of a factor of all the things around him? And that's to be seen because like we've talked to people and he's like a pretty unique player in terms of position he plays and like the way he does it. And he seems to sort of need people around him that complements his skill set. And I don't feel like we've seen as much of that this year.
Yeah, I think that's a good point too, is that he is not your everything is going to run through him kind of 10. I think I've heard the extra time guys call it a 9.5. And I think I've called it a power 10 before, where it's like, yeah, he plays in that space on the field where an attacking midfielder does, but he's not going to be the guy to like pull every string and make every pass. Like that's just not really his game. And so he is going to need some service and have some other guys on the field creating. And last season, that was mostly Diego Fagundes. And this season, Fagundes just wasn't all that good. And so when you don't have guys on the team who are going to like pull some attention away, be able to give you that service that he needs. I think that is part of it as well, but that is not all of it. Driussi has been poor himself at times as well.
Yeah. Let's go on to Robert Miller. What result at the end of the season, play-in game, playoffs will be enough to silence the Wolf out crowd? How much of the season would you put on Wolf? This is probably the more interesting part of this for me, I think. How much of the season would you put on Wolf, and how much would you put on the roster build, Claudio Reyna? And given recent form, does Austin beat LAC at home? Oh, and then I can't.
There's a lot of questions. Let's break it down.
Let's skip the Kopitar question. Let's break it down.
Okay. So first question, what result at the end of the season will be enough to silence the Wolf out crowd? We actually got a response from another Patreon member, Alex Mod, and he says an MLS Cup win is what would make him
which
happy,
is in some way probably true.
Yeah, I think that's the right answer. I mean, I don't know. What else do you say about that?
I think you'd leave it at that. So I think so. I think we covered last week sort of what our expectations were and how we would consider like a good season or a bad season. So like maybe how much of the season would you put on Wolf, and how much do you put on the roster build?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've said this several times. I'm also very bored and tired of talking about Josh Wolf's job. But I think this is primarily a roster build thing. We got lucky with no injuries last year, with everyone being able to play in their right position and playing well. We did not have that this year. And whenever you have multiple healthy center backs that are not good enough to play MLS minutes and you're forced to play a midfielder there, that's a roster build thing. And so like, I think Josh Wolf is the best and the most perfect coach in MLS? Absolutely not. But I think that the roster build is a much bigger issue than he is.
I mean, I guess to be fair, he probably has like a hand in that roster build somewhat. Like I feel like it's not an either or thing. Like he probably had some influence on the players that Austin brought in after.
Yeah, I mean,
was hired. I would hope
any coach should and will have some influence, but it's also not their job to build the roster, and you should have someone else's opinion whose job it actually is, and that person was supposed to be Claudio Reyna. If Claudio Reyna was letting Josh Wolf pick the players, I think Claudio Reyna was doing a bad job.
Okay, let's go into Alex Mod. Which current FCito players do you think can make the jump to a first team contract in 2024?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. Do you have any answers for this one?
Any like players who are on Austin FC2 that don't already have a first team roster that we would want to see? And I think my guy Sebastian Pino, he does not have a first team contract, right?
Correct. Yeah, he does not.
So he would be my first choice.
Yeah, I mean, if I were to take some of the guys now who are on this team who I think would be ready to play like spot minutes, I think Valentin Noel and David Rodriguez would be my picks. Pinot is one that like I don't know that I would feel comfortable with him playing MLS minutes now, but like he's young, 20, 21, something like that. A year can make a lot of difference, and so maybe he would be ready for it next year. All that being said, like I think a lot of these guys, like they're going to be making moves and moving things around. Any of the guys that they have real belief in will be probably doing most of preseason camp with the first team. And so they're going to get chances to get themselves a contract. Like we've had these trialists in camp every season so far, right? I think fewer of those spots will be taken up by outsiders, and a couple of them will be Austin FC2 guys essentially being on trial and getting to play in these preseason games and get a chance. Like I think David Rodriguez scored some goals in the preseason this year for the first team, right? So I think a lot of guys are going to get the chance, and it's not. I feel like a lot of fans think that they should just throw in some second team guys to the first team just to see what happens because we don't know that much about them. But like the technical staff sees these guys in training a lot, and they know what they look like against the first team guys and have a better idea if they think they can hack it against these first team players or not. And so I don't have a solid answer. Like Valentino Noel, my knock against him is that he's a bit older, and so he probably is the player he's going to be at this point. He's not gonna like his ceiling is very close to where he is now. David Rodriguez is a bit younger. We have some other guys who are even younger than that, and so maybe some of these guys come along in their development, come out of nowhere in preseason next year. But yeah, I would, if I had to bet on one, I would say David Rodriguez.
Yeah, I think you're probably right on that one. So let's see if tomorrow Austin FC had a new coach and your only choices were Robin Fraser, Ezra Hendrickson, Bruce Arena, which I like. Hopefully, nobody picks Bruce Arena at this point, like anywhere, or Gio Savarese.
No, wait, don't say Gio. So Phil West said Robin Fraser, Ezra Hendrickson, and Bruce Arena. Robert Miller came in and said Gio Savarese too, if you want to add that to the list. But then I didn't copy this in the notes here, so Jeremiah can't see it. But Phil West came back in and said, no, Gio's not part of the list. I just
okay,
to make it harder. So we can come back to Savarese as a postscript.
Yeah, my answer doesn't change given those three or given those four. Like,
what is it?
Of those, it's Robin Fraser. Like I feel like Robin Fraser is Robin Fraser is like a really good coach. It's just been in bad situations generally. And maybe he wouldn't be the answer ultimately long term, but I feel like there's a lot there, and he's just been in the wrong place at the wrong time. And I feel like Austin would give Robin Fraser the resources to succeed, and probably in a way that would like not require a giant roster overhaul in terms of the way he likes to coach.
Yeah, I mean, Bruce Arena, there's lots of information coming out. Still not enough information, but if he were to be rumored to be the next Austin FC coach, I would want to know a lot more about what went on in New England that led to his resignation before I would be anywhere close to comfortable with that decision. Ezra Hendrickson, I mean, a lot of folks, like insiders in the league, really like Ezra Hendrickson. They really respect him, but his only first team coaching experiences with a really bad Chicago Fire team. And so it's just like, he seems like a big question mark to me. And I just really I don't know much about him as a person. I don't know much about him as a coach, and everything I do know about him as a coach is him coaching a really bad team. And so I have no clue what to think about that one. Robin Fraser is a guy, as Jeremiah said, who's done fairly well with a pretty weak roster in Colorado. And he seems to be like he coached, I think he was Greg Vanny's assistant in Toronto for a while. He's coached under a few different systems, seems to be a pretty pragmatic guy. Like, he wants to play interesting soccer, but knows when to be pragmatic and knows how to do what needs to be done with the players in front of him. And so he would be my pick there. Now, throwing in Robert Miller's postscript here, Gio Savarese. You said that doesn't change your answer.
It does not change my answer. No.
Does
and
why
it change
is that?
your answer? Oh, I just don't. I feel like there was this like an existing system that he came into, and he had some results, and just like whatever. I feel like he's who he's going to be, and I don't feel like there's unrealized potential in Savarese in the way there might be for Robin Fraser, given this small choice of coaches.
Yeah, one of my big worries about Savarese would be that he played in Portland just a really different style of soccer than what we do here. With Rodolfo Borrell as our sporting director, like, regardless of who the coach is, he's going to want the team to play close to what kind of his vision of soccer
that system
is.
Totally.
And Savarese, maybe he could do that, but he hasn't done it for the last 5 years. And so Fraser would be one that I think would be a bit closer to that. That being said, I really like Gio Savarese, just like as a character in the league. He's really well spoken, seems to be a guy who players really like a good motivator, gets guys up for big games. So I like that aspect of him, but tactically I would be a little bit nervous if he were to be the hire. I think another question here is, let's say, going back to the first part of the question, Josh Wolf is fired tomorrow. and we hire one of these guys. We hire Robin Fraser. We hire Gio Savarese. Like, how excited are you about those hires?
Oh, well, I think this gets back into not that excited. I'll just leave it at that. I mean, I feel like that goes back into like what I've talked about for a long time. Like if Burrell believes that Josh Wolf's not the guy, just have Davey Arnaud coach the last 7 games and then see from the entire world what the availability is for coaches who might fit into the system and what he wants to do during the offseason.
Yeah, I mean, like, let's take the tomorrow part out of it. Let's say that at the end of the season, they fire Wolf and bring in one of these guys. Like, I mean, I like these two people as coaches. I like them as people, but I wouldn't be like over the moon about like, yeah, like we have our complaints about Josh Wolf, but like these two guys aren't like home runs on paper in any way. So I would be a little disappointed if this is all we got in return.
Yeah, absolutely. Same. I wouldn't necessarily even believe that was 100% an improvement for sure. Let's go with one more Josh Wolf question, I think, from Tom Halleck. Do you believe Precourt Rodeau will keep Wolf for the first half of 2024? For the same reason we didn't have a sporting director for the first half of the season, waiting to see what the end of the Premier League season brings. I do not believe that they will do that for the same reason. I don't think that Austin's going to hire a coach from the Premier League and just wait till it opens up. But I'm also not convinced that who knows how the rest of the season will go, but I'm not 100% convinced that like they're going to be ready to make a move at the end of this year, given the short amount of time Burrell has had to directly observe what the situation is in Austin.
Yeah, I guess like the way I was thinking about this question is, let's say they do have someone in mind, like Burrell does have someone in mind who has a job now and is just waiting for next summer to be able to bring those guys in. Like, thinking about it that way, I mean, it's about like, what is Josh Wolf standing in the organization as far as with players, with his staff? If it is at a functional level and a functional like relationship with everyone in it, I could see him waiting and until like the prime candidate is available. If it is not, then yeah, let's cut ties now and let Arnaud have the helm until the prime candidate is available.
Yeah, let's go. The next one is from Nathan Doris. Which is the bigger loss this season, Diego or Gabrielson plus Felipe? Did we miss the ruthlessness and ability to see out wins ties that Ruben and Felipe brought? Maybe more than any scoring contribution from Diego. Let's start with that one. Like I guess the question is, for me, and maybe I underestimated this, like the leadership and gap from like both Ruben and Felipe being gone. And like, is that a real thing? And do we underestimate that and just looking at statistics? I think it's the way I would like to frame that question.
Yeah, I know a lot of people really were sad to see Felipe go and really wanted him to come back, but he like really didn't play that much. And so like, how much was that doing with him sitting on the bench during a game? Like, I think locker room and stuff is important as well. But I will still maybe answer Gabrielson plus Felipe just because of Gabrielson. And if you ask me in like February 2023, which of these guys would be missed more, I would say Diego. But if you ask me in September of 2023, I think based on what Diego Fagundes did in his time here and what we saw Gabrielson do in his time here last year, I think Gabrielson is the much bigger miss.
Yeah, and I think Alelio Väisänen, and I think he's probably going to be really good for this team. But I feel like Gabrielson's combination of both like being pretty good and being a leader is something that's missed. Like
yeah, absolutely.
That's a part of the team chemistry that's gone. Like on paper, Väisänen is the better player. I don't like think there's a lot of doubt around that. But just like when you combine that with sort of the locker room effect and everything else, like
and the experience as well, because Vicenen is a much younger, or not much younger, significantly younger player than Gabrielson was. So it's like that veteran experience as well.
Yep. All right, next one. Our favorite question asker. What's going to make you answer first? ATX Bird Camp Lover 6969420. In Welsh folklore, it said that fairies would ride corgis into battle. I just feel like as the owner of 2 corgis, like I'm not going to objectively answer this question. If you could choose any animal to ride into battle, what would it be and why?
Well, as someone who has a very large permanent scar on my leg because of a corgi having bit me, I'm not going to pick a corgi. And I was trying to think of all the cool animals that you could ride into battle, but I'm going to stick to my brand and give the boring but correct answer and say a horse.
You think it's horse, right? So okay. I'm going to go with a black bear. I mean, assuming that you could ride a black bear. Just feel like a black bear is like, in the moment, more aggressive and will probably, like, my black bear will scare your horse away as long as it doesn't eat me while I'm on its back.
I'm just saying there's a reason. Like, how many old paintings are you seeing with soldiers riding black bears into battle?
God, you are so practical. That's a good point. I mean, assuming these are real animals, we can't choose like a Game of Thrones dragon or something. Sean Collins,
you can't ride a corgi into battle either, so I think you could do whatever you want.
That's fair. You can't ride my corgis in a battle for sure. If Austin FC bombs out and miss the playoffs, do we get a good pick in the super draft?
And this is from Sean Collins.
Sean Collins, yeah. Get the best pick in the super draft.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good pick, relatively speaking. So, like, you get a high pick in the super draft. Whether or not that is a good pick is kind of a murky question, right? Like, nothing is for sure in the MLS super draft.
So I don't think this question probably came in before then. So like the Dallas Cowboys, I don't remember his name right now, but their new kicker was Toronto FC's first pick in the super draft in 2017. He played college soccer at Notre Dame, did not play college football. First round pick of Toronto FC, he played for Toronto FC 2 in the Birmingham Steel, and then decided he wasn't very good at soccer. And so just like became a kicker, and now he's an NFL kicker. And I feel like that's a really good testament to the quality of soccer player you can get out of the super draft.
Yeah, it's like the super draft is becoming less and less important with each year that goes by, and the talent is thinner and thinner. And so, yeah, I mean, that would be a slight consolation if we finish much lower down the table. But this isn't the NBA where you tank an entire season to get the first draft. Like, it is not worth doing that.
Right, and I think you would, of Austin's super draft picks, I think CJ Fodry and Dani Pereira were the lowest of the 3 and the most valuable, right? Didn't Kip go earlier in the draft than either of those other 2 guys?
I think we got Kip at 5.
Okay, it's like
so
Dani might have been.
Dani was number 1.
Oh, yeah, Dani was number 1. That's
but
right.
He wasn't the consensus number 1 pick.
That's what I was thinking.
That was the Mayaka year.
I forgot.
He's played for 3 years in the 2nd division. So that's just another testament to that. It is not a sure deal. And as excited as we were to get Kip Keller at 5, like, people were thinking he might go 1 or 2, and we got a steal at 5, and like, he still could turn out to be a decent player, but I'm nowhere near as excited about him now as I was the day after the draft.
All right, let's go with Brian Mangum, which I love that he sent us a question. Longtime listener, first time caller. Have all the striker signings not named John Gallagher been bad, or is the lack of production a problem with the Wolf Ball trademark system? I'll hang up and listen.
First of all, I'm curious as to why he decided to say John Gallagher as a striker signing, but
well, he was at one point, right, in Atlanta. I think
they did not sign him to be a striker.
Oh, well, sure.
Like, he was playing striker in Atlanta, but it was, again, the same reason he played striker for us is because they didn't have anybody else to do it.
Right.
And John Gallagher is just that kind of guy. But I will say that it is a combination of the two. I think most of our striker signings have been A, injured quite a bit, or B, bad to inconsistent. But I think that is exacerbated by this system, at least as far as the numbers go, because I think we talked about this when looking at like the low expected goal numbers or like the inconsistent expected goal numbers when it comes to Austin's goal output last season, where Austin creates a lot of these chances where it's like a ball across the box that barely misses someone's head and goes out for a goal kick. Like that moment is still very dangerous, but doesn't register as a statistical shot and therefore does not count as XG. And so I think because of like the way they create chances, it makes those numbers look worse. And then also, like, if you're not creating chances for these strikers, their numbers are going to be worse. And that is like what this system is for, is creating high percentage chances in the box. And if we're not doing that, then yeah, that system is hurting those strikers. But also, I don't think any of our strikers have been all that good.
Yeah, and I would add that just the profile of our strikers has been the same, right? Like it's been older guys who have played a lot in Major League Soccer who have had some success. And I don't know if that's like the wolf ball system or the recruiting system or whatever, but like there's a common Maxi Ruti, Jesse Zardes, Will Bruin,
you're leaving
Danny
one
Houston,
out, though.
Danny Houston. Like they played differently, but
Musa Jite.
Well, he was bad too. Okay. Sorry. I only got
he was good
out
for
of 5.
4 games.
4 out of 5 guys are like longtime MLS guys who've kind of sucked in Austin.
Yeah, that's true. And like I think we ended up playing a lot of guys who weren't the plan originally, right? Like Houston was supposed to kind of be one of the guys. And he ended up missing almost that entire first season. Musa Jite, I think, was kind of the backup plan there. He ended up being very inconsistent until the end of
Big Celery
season.
Might have even been the backup plan too.
Yeah, and he was, I mean,
he was never played.
Yeah, Aaron Schoenfeld, aka Big Celery. I think he was going to be like this year's Will Bruin. Like he was going to play trash can minutes at the end, but we didn't even have him to do that. Like he just was not available ever. And so it's been, if not a poorly used and mismanaged position, it's been a very unfortunate position for this team.
Yeah. All right. Let's get a couple more questions here before we get done. Brian Ehrenreich, is it better to make the playoffs and lose or not make the playoffs at all? I am 100% on not making the playoffs is worse than making the playoffs and losing. And I will never be a fan who would want the team to not make the playoffs because of my other motivations.
Yeah, I don't what is the good side of not making the playoffs at all? I do not understand this logic.
I mean, I guess it's less heartbreaking. I don't know. Do we get the tickets for free if we make the playoffs? That might be part of it too.
I don't remember. It's either maybe one game was free. I don't think it was free, but I think it's like on a schedule and you pay like slightly more than you would for a regular season and you get first choice for your seats or whatever. But like, I don't know. And unless like your goal is for the team to do worse so that they fire the coach, like if that is like your main goal, sure, maybe that is better. But B, like what a miserable way to be a soccer fan. Like I don't know. I do not see any situation where it is better to not make the playoffs at all.
I'm going to agree. So like this is one, I think it's probably a good question for you. Do you think Dani Pereira's best position is number 6? And what is Alex Ring's best position?
This is a very complicated question. I think it's like, you can look at it a few ways. Like, is it his best position in this team and in context of the players around them? Or is it their best positions in a vacuum?
And now you have to answer it.
I would say Dani's best position in a vacuum and maybe in this team is in a pair of 2 deeper lying midfielders where he's not the only person with like primarily defensive responsibility.
He's not the guy sitting like he's not the guy sitting farthest back. Yeah.
He's not. Yeah. He's not tasked solely with protecting a back line because A, he's not that good at it. and B, it takes away what he is good at, which is carrying the ball forward. I've heard a lot of people argue that we should play him further up the field. I think the farther up the field you move him, like his value starts to go down. I think, yeah, if you played him as like kind of a box to box 8 or in like a pair, he could still be good. And like what he does so well is receive the ball deep and carry the ball forward. But once you get into that final third, he is developing a bit of a shot. Like he's been striking balls fairly well over the last year or so. But as far as like vision, like picking out passes, like, yeah, he's gotten better at that too. But he's 23 now. Like he's not going to magically become like this lock picking 10 at this point in his life. So I don't think playing him like as an out and out attacking mid is his best position, but also playing him as like a single 6. I don't think that's his best position either. So somewhere in between those things. But when you take in the context of the rest of the team, it kind of complicates it. And like, how do you get the most out of him while also getting other good players on the field? I don't really know the answer to that.
Yeah, on the Alex Ring one, I would say his best position is wherever you need him at this point. Like he's, if in a world in a vacuum, like a 6 seems good, but he doesn't want to play that, and so like he does pretty decent in his 8 in this side. I feel like he wants to play more forward, so I don't know that you're going to have like a happy Alex Ring playing at the spot where Alex Ring can be maximized for your average MLS team.
Yeah, and I think in this team, like what we saw in the last game where he is playing a more advanced role, but is not the he's like one of 4 advanced attacking players and not one of like 2 or 3. Like if he's in like a sole 10, I don't think he's good in that position. But if he's in a situation where he can move into space to like pull a defense apart, advance the ball, play advancing passes, things like that, like I think he is good, slightly more advanced. But again, he is not like your stereotypical string pulling 10 either. So yeah, I think a good question from Brian, where like these two guys, like I think there is a lot of context and complication to the answers.
All right, well, let's go. And this kind of ties into the next one. Some of that may be resolved when we see whether Austin chooses to re-sign Alex Ring, who believes on an expiring contract this year. So with this year's offseason building up to be one of the bigger ones, sort of in the context of massive turnover, like what big moves we see Austin getting? Basically, when can we start getting excited for signing new players? What are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I mean, I don't. If she's asking for like specific players, I have no clue, absolutely no clue who we're gonna be signing. With Burrell being here, like his network is vast, but that makes it only more complicated to pick. Like I think it's like probably fewer of the like MLS veterans and maybe more of like a European profile, but that's about as far as I can guess.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, the money wise is mostly coming out of the attack, right? If I remember right, when like the expiring contracts and who may be gone. So I would expect that. Timing wise, it's not that far away. Like it's the middle of December to the middle of January, or middle of December to the end of January is typically when you see a lot of announcements about player movement. So I think we'll know pretty well in advance of the start of the season what Austin FC is going to look like.
Yeah, and it seems like probably maybe more of like the moves from within MLS. We could maybe start hearing things like as early as December, maybe even November. But then for like guys coming in from other leagues, those just based on what we've seen in the past and then just like how the transfer window lies, like there might be some spots that we're filling as the season is starting next year. And then others that maybe we leave open for like some guys in Europe who are on expiring contracts, or like someone that Burrell has in his network and he has his eye on, but we have to wait until the summer until they're available. Like that, is probably not like, I mean, that's likely to happen at least in one or two of these spots as well. So like you said, I think most of it will be filled before the end of next season, but there might be a few spots that aren't, and Burrell's not gonna just fill the spot to fill it. He's gonna wait and get his guy.
Yeah, I think that makes total sense too. So we'll see how that all turns out. So those are all the questions we got. You ready to wrap it up?
Yeah, I think so. Before we finish, we'd like to remind you to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And then come find us online at LVHero87, JBentley_ATX on Twitter, and then Moon Tower Soccer on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Then sign up for the Patreon, where you too can submit questions whenever we do these Patreon questions. And then check out Phil West's Substack, which is verdeallday.substack.com/Moontower. With that little tag on the end, you'll get a 20% discount. Thanks so much for listening. We will be back next week to review the Portland Timbers match, and then we'll also be previewing the midweek match away to New York Red Bulls, and then the home game the following weekend against the LA Galaxy. Until then, I'm Landon Cottom.
I'm Jeremiah Bentley.
We'll catch you next time.
When no one is around.
Think for nothings you never.
La gente, oh my God,